mentioned. Now take note, to help them do three things: what is right, what is just, and what is fair. So earthly success may be done differently. You may achieve earthly success without doing what is right, just, and fair. In fact, a lot of people achieve earthly success by sacrificing these three things: what is right, just, and fair. Tama? We hear that a lot. Now, what the Bible is telling us, true success in the eyes of God is doing what is right, just, and fair. That's why, as I said earlier, you cannot pursue God's will if you are unwilling to value what God values. You will never understand what God is doing in your life if you do not understand the values by which He operates. So what is right, just, and fair? Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, to help them do what is right, just, and fair. True success has to do with what is right, just, and fair. So let's look at those three things. The first one is what is right. So right, according to the Bible, is what is morally upright, what is correct, or what is aligned with God's standards. Okay? Modern life is very scary because we have a lot of standards for what is right and wrong. Very confusing, ano? In fact, ang society natin is very sinful, so it has created its own standards. And if we are not discerning, and if we do not align with God's will and do not read the Bible, we will not see what is truly important to the Lord. Confusing eh. In fact, I would say this is a big challenge, especially for parents, kasi yung mga anak natin, they have a different way of learning. And most of what they are exposed to is online. Now, understand that every movie that they watch, everything that they see, the creators of this have their own agenda. Kaya paminsan po, they are imposing their crooked and wicked values to our children, even to us. So sa Bible, we have to go back to what is morally upright in the eyes of God. In the biblical usage, being right refers to living in a way that is ethically correct, not just socially acceptable. It is about aligning one's actions, heart, and decision with God's will. Now, take note of the usage, no? Not just what is socially acceptable. Because many times, the tendency is to assume because something is socially acceptable, then it must be right. Because everybody else does it, then maybe it's right. Di ba? Yan ang tendency. In fact, para kang tumatawid sa sa tawiran. Hindi ko alam kung may tawiran dito na tamang tawiran tsaka maling tawiran, no? Hindi ba minsan pag tatawid ka sa mali, doon lahat tumatawid. No? Tapos tumawid ka doon sa tama, parang ikaw yung may diferensya. Di ba? Bakit ka tumatawid sa tama samantalang lahat mali? That is what is socially acceptable. So the Bible is telling us, no. What is socially acceptable is not necessarily right in the eyes of God. Hindi dahil uso, hindi dahil lahat ginagawa, hindi dahil lahat tanggap yan, hindi dahil modernong panahon na, it's okay. No, we have to go back to the Bible. So the implication is this: doing what is right means choosing God's way even when it is hard or unpopular. That's in the context of everyday life, not just ministry or church life. Everyday life, no? For students, yung studies, for those who are working, even in the context of work, and especially in the context of ministry. Now, secondly, what is just? Okay, right, just, and fair. So let's talk about just. The meaning of this word is acting according to justice, law, and fairness, especially in a legal or relational sense. Now, biblical usage. Justice in Proverbs reflects God's nature as a righteous judge. It deals with how we treat others, ensuring that everyone receives what they are due, neither more nor less. So, what is the difference between right and just? Now, something may be right, but you may do and pursue what is right in a manner that is not just. Di ba? Minsan sa ngalan ng pagiging tama, we hurt other people. Tama ba? Minsan nangyayari yan eh. Tama naman ako ha. Minsan yun ang sinasabi natin. But understand that what God is telling us, pursue what is right, what is just. The implication, being just means making decisions that protect the vulnerable, punish wrongdoing, and uphold God's order. So this is success. In the absence of what is right, just, and fair, there is no true success. As I said, worldly values would say, You can be successful by sacrificing what is right, just, and fair. Our goal as worshipers is to glorify God. And worldly success will not glorify the Lord because many times it sacrifices what is right, just, and fair. Kaya minsan nagtataka tayo, no? Lord, bakit di mo binibigay sa akin yung success na gusto ko? Maybe God has already given you true success. Kaya lang ang problem natin, we're looking the other way, using the world standard for success. Now, what about what is fair? Number 3. So the meaning of the word fair is what is level, upright, even, or equitable, free from bias or partiality. Now, yung biblical usage is fairness. It implies integrity and balance in all relationships and dealings. It's often used in poetic parallelism with justice and righteousness. So to be fair is to treat others with equal respect, without favoritism, guided by truth and integrity. Yung parents namin have passed on wisdom to us, no? To honor them, I will share the wisdom. Yung isang wisdom po ng parents namin, growing up, no? Mahirap yung may kapatid kang Pastor Jay, no? Madalas nang lalamang. Biro lang. Anyway, pag may nagbigay po sa amin ng mga pagkain nung malilit pa kami, halimbawa, chocolate, ang rule sa bahay, kung sino naghati, siya yung huling pipili. Grabe, no? Fair naman, di ba? Maganda yung rule, di ba? Kung ikaw naghati, ikaw yung huling pipili. Ako lagi ang designated na tagahati. Ang hirap, no? Yung Toblerone, mahirap hatiin yan. Kasi pag biniyak mo yan, nababasag. So pati mga nabasag, nilalagay-lagay ko pa yun. Pinakamahirap hatiin pag nagbigay ng M&M's na yung may peanuts. Kasi iba-ibang size yun eh. So sinosort out ko pa yun, small, medium, large, and divided by 3. Tapos ako yung huling pipili. Sometimes you cannot equally divide it kasi iba naman yung bilang, no? And not divisible by 3. Pero yun nga, to be fair, kung sino naghati, siya huling pipili. Does that make sense? No? Alam niyo ba na marami sa relationships natin nasisira because of these 3 things? We fail to uphold these 3 things. What is right, just, and fair. Marami ng family nag-divide, nag-away, because we do not pursue what is right, just, and fair. So what God is telling us, you will never truly enjoy life the way God wants you to enjoy life if you do not uphold these 3 things. What is right, just, and fair. Isa pang ginawa ng parents namin, may mga properties po sila na hinati sa amin. We were in high school, yung bunso was back then in elementary pa lang. Hindi naman marami yung property, pero ang ginawa ng mother ko, she divided it into 3, yung ibang properties. At ang sabi niya, tingnan yung maigi, tama ba yung pagkakahati ko? Fair ba? So, tiningnan namin, sabi niya, ito malaki yung cut, kasi nasa bandang likod. Ito naman, maliit yung cut, mas mataas ang value kasi nasa harap. So, is it fair? When all of us agreed na fair yung pagkakahati, you know what she did? Pinarapol sa amin. Sabi sa amin, so ibig mo sabihin kahit alin dyan mapunta sa inyo, okay lang. Yes po, because we trust your judgment and based on our assessments, it's fair. So sabi niya, kahit alin mapunta, okay lang. Yes, when we agreed, ni-raffle kung ano yung makukuha. Can you imagine? No? Kahit alin dyan ang mapunta sa'yo because you agreed na fair, okay. And that will spare the family from conflicts. How many families have broken ties with each other, bad relationships, simply because we fail to uphold what is right, just, and fair? Try to imagine how many problems we have right now that are related to the failure to apply what is right, just, and fair. Tama? Ang dami nating problems. So you may succeed from the eyes of the world and yet be miserable at the same time if you do not uphold what is right, just, and fair. Kaya sometimes, sadly, when we read Proverbs 3, 5-6, we isolate it from the context of the whole Proverbs. Kaya yung Proverbs chapter 1, as I said, is very important because it talks about the purpose of the Proverbs. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives. Gusto pala tayo ni Lord sumakses. Iba lang yung method. Ang sabi niya, to help them do what is right, just, and fair. Di ba natin sabihin? Right, just, and fair. Madaling tandaan. But these three things, actually, if you try to read it again and again, study it again and again, you will be surprised that many of our problems come from this. We fail to uphold what is right, just, and fair. So, yung earthly success will bring misery. Yung earthly success will not last if we suffer the consequences of not